My name is Emily Rothen and I'm a drama therapist in the Battersea Mental Health Support Team. And my colleague Patricia will also introduce herself.
Hello, good morning everyone. My name is Patricia Ojo-Hodman and I'm a drama therapist in the Battersea Mental Health Support Team.
So I just wanted to start by giving you a brief overview of our service. So the support team is an early intervention service for child and adolescent mental health. And we cover over 20 schools in the Battersea area. And we offer a range of support, including parent-guided self-help for children experiencing anxiety or behavioural difficulties, drama therapy, occupational therapy, and workshops such as this one for parents and carers, and also support and training to school staff around children's emotional well-being. And so today's session is creativity, communication and connection. And we've put together some tools that we hope will be helpful to you if your children are holding difficult feelings and finding them hard to express using words. The presentation will be about 45 minutes and then we'll have some time for questions and answers at the end. So the outline of what we're going to cover today is here, and please use the chat for questions if you think of any during the presentation, and then we'll feed them back into the discussion. So we'll be covering the challenges that families are facing first, and particularly thinking about emotional well-being and the impact of the pandemic. And then we will be looking at why creativity matters for learning, communication and emotional well-being. And then the second part of the presentation will be around some practical tools, some practical therapeutic tools, focusing on different areas. So play, expressing feelings, and focus and relaxation. And then we'll have time for questions, and we'll ask you to fill in a very brief online feedback form as well. So we know how difficult things are for parents and children at the moment, and we'd ask you just to take what you need from our presentation. Don't worry about writing lots of notes. We'll be putting a video of the presentation on our YouTube channel so you can access the resources whenever you need them. And the slides will be circulated to the schools and also to yourselves and we'll give you an email address to write to if you'd like to receive a copy of the slides as well. So our main aim today is to provide you with some tools to support children and communicate their feelings when talking is not the answer. There's lots of information out there, and we've put some links and some other resources for you, and we'll share those at the end of the presentation. Okay, so just thinking about current challenges and so different areas to think about. And so the amount of uncertainty that we're all living with at the moment can feel very overwhelming. And the new normal, as it's often called, may be very confusing for children and young people, especially if the old normal was already challenging. And we know that when people are in difficult situations, it's helpful to divide the problem into two categories. So there's things that we can do something about, and also things that we can do nothing about. And so looking at this list, we know that unfortunately there's lots of things that are going to go into the second category. So what helps us when we're feeling that lack of control over our situation is distractions and activities that help us with the mental strain of the situation. And so the Arts Council has been studying the effects of creativity during the pandemic. And what they've told us is that the role played by creativity has been profound. So stimulating and entertaining people who are suffering from loneliness and isolation, and helping people to manage mental health conditions, as well as promoting positive mental health for the wider community. Supporting physical well-being through activities like dance for mobility, singing for lung health with long COVID sufferers, and art for expressing emotions, and also a means of processing the uncertainty and an outlet for grief and trauma. An example that we wanted to share with you was from Italy in the first lockdown. The neighbourhoods where people were singing from their balconies to each other to lift spirits and also to communicate using their voices. And I just wanted to share this quote with you. It's from an article about the challenges of home learning, and it really resonated with me, and it might do for many of you as well. So it's from Philippa Perryman, and she says, "You can only do your best. Lower your expectations and try not to stress. There's a window at the moment for children to follow their own lines of inquiry and curiosity. Let them watch a beetle in the park or draw a picture. What's really precious is the relationship between you and your child. Don't do anything to jeopardize that."
So before we just move on, we wanted to think about creativity with our children, and it might be helpful to think about your own childhood experiences of stories and playing and drawings, etc. So we just want you to spend a few minutes just answering these questions. And what does creativity mean to you? What stories did you love being told or reading when you were a child? How did you play as a child? And what did you really enjoy playing with? So just spend a few moments just thinking about that. And if you want to pop your answers in the chat, then we can feed it into the presentation as well. Okay, so why being creative in a pandemic? And Emily's kind of already said quite a few things of why it's important to be creative in a pandemic. But being creative allows us to process and express our feelings. Creative activities can reduce stress levels and anxiety. Doing something creative may help to distract us when in a low mood, and help us to move on from difficult events. The emphasis is on the process rather than the finished product, and this can help with self-esteem and confidence. Being creative together promotes teamwork and social communication skills. It's also a change from online learning and screen time. It gives tools to use when words are not helping, and it can be used to make connections with people that we're not able to see at this time in person. So drawing in the pandemic, the effects of rolling news and social media. If possible, try to minimize the amount that children hear and see. We realize that it's hard as it's all around us at the moment. And this drawing comes from a project that invited children from around the world to share their drawings of coronavirus. And this was drawn by Gonzalo, an 8-year-old boy from Argentina. And he's drawn transformer robot nurses and doctors and different versions of COVID-19. And children often communicate their worries through drawings rather than talking. So if your child has a worry about something they have heard or read or in the news, ask them if they can draw it, and then try to ask them open questions. For example, what would the coronavirus look like if it was a character? What would it say? How would it speak? What is life like for them? What frightens them? And what makes them happy? So in drama therapy, we often use a tool called distancing, and that simply means that worries and fears, difficulties are explored by drawing a picture, telling a story, using metaphors, and this may result in children being more able to communicate fears and anxiety. So I think Emily's just going to tell you about this, the creative video.
So this is something that you can look at in your own time, and it is a video about divergent thinking. and why it matters. And the kind of general premise is that the adults and children are given a box, and adults generally are kind of thinking of very practical things you can do with the box, and then you'll see the children really using their imaginations, and then when they're given a problem to solve, the children are much quicker at thinking of a solution to the problem, because they're thinking, kind of literally thinking outside the box, that as adults we find much harder to do. So it's a really interesting video. So we'll put the link up at the end as well, so that you can look at this in your own time. Okay, so how does being creative help us to learn? So it can increase motivation, deepen our understanding, and through this idea of divergent thinking, and also bring enjoyment. So motivation is the chance to for children to pursue meaningful goals, so things that matter to them, especially if they're given the freedom to create something on their own terms. And creativity can also help with emotional and sensory regulation. Ruby, our occupational therapist, spoke in the lockdown learning webinar, which is also on our YouTube channel. So she spoke about high and low arousal and a range of activities that we can help use to help children to self-regulate through both calming and then alerting activities as well. So Patricia's just going to cover this again briefly now, but please look at the presentation if you'd like to learn more from Ruby about this area.
So before any of us can learn or do functional tasks, our body, specifically our central nervous system, has to be at a regulated state. And this is done through our senses. This is why it's called sensory regulation. All of us are processing sensory information from our environment all the time, and this is constantly impacting in our day-to-day lives, taking us up and down on the seesaw. Ideally, most of the time we fall in the middle where Winnie the Pooh is, and this is where our nervous system is calm, so we are calm, and this helps us to focus, learn and work. However, if our body is feeling deregulated, it can be hard to process other skills, for example, academic learning. It can also be hard to regulate our emotions, focus, energy levels and behaviour will be affected. Luckily, there are lots of practical strategies that you can work into your child's day to help move them towards their just right point on the seesaw. So you may also be familiar with the zones of regulation, which looks at emotional regulation on a scale as well. The zones are used more and more in schools to help children start to recognise how their feelings are connected to their physical sensations. And we can then group tools in different areas where they'll be most useful. So, for example, using some calming and focusing strategies when children are in the yellow zone. To minimise the likelihood of them moving into the red zone. You may find this helpful to have at home with your child, and you may want to add some ideas into each section. So here we've got, you might like to make your own emotional thermometer with your child to help them and you identify what they are feeling. So this can help to think about what might be useful at that time. And here we've got two different ways that they've used the zones of regulation. And so if you're not already recycling, please do, as this is a great free resource for you to use with your child to be creative. So toilet rolls, lolly sticks, pieces of paper, pegs there we've got, whatever you have in your home, you can use it to be creative. So this is an activity that you can offer your child, or you could do this together to spend some quality time with each other, and thinking about and talking about what might be useful to go into each zone. And you can also share your own strategies that you use to cope when you're feeling worried. For example, this is a great way of modeling and developing positive emotional well-being to your child.
So we're going to move on to the more kind of practical toolkit of our presentation, and so thinking about how we can use creativity to support children's emotional well-being. And these are some of the areas that we use in drama therapy. So art, music, movement, and stories. So kind of using these tools to help people to process difficult feelings and experiences, and to support their emotional well-being, also to help with focus and empathy. So putting, the idea of putting ourselves in each other's shoes and kind of reading other people's feelings. So the first area we're going to look at is play and imagination. Okay. And we have, we know that children learn through play, and that it's their preferred language of communication. So play helps children to express and process some really intense feelings that can be unacceptable outside of play. And so this can reduce the likelihood of those feelings leaking out in their behaviour at a time when it may, be unsafe or be, not kind of appropriate to the environment. So play can be really useful for exploring those very, very strong, intense feelings. And so cognitively, we know that children also don't have the inner resources to think through difficult feelings. So their brain hasn't developed this capacity yet. So it's more about kind of experiencing those feelings rather than kind of the cognitive process that we develop as we get older. And also words to describe feelings often don't match up with the force of what's being felt physically. And so expressing feelings through images and imagination can really help with this. So one that's commonly used is the idea of anger feeling like a volcano in my tummy. Play and imagination are also really important for self-awareness, for problem solving, and understanding others. And so we've got a few ideas for you here, and you don't need lots of toys or props to do these, so just using whatever you have within the house. So the first one is around moving like the elements, so using these ideas to echo emotions and bringing the strong feelings, kind of physicalizing strong feelings, and thinking about kind of sort of tying in learning, so the idea of active learning, that when you're moving, when you're in movement, when you're learning doing something for the first time, when you're doing something new, you'll be more likely to remember it the next time. So we also have this boy here playing with the dinosaurs, and so this is the idea of projected play, which is using toys and objects to be different characters and to tell spontaneous stories. So for younger children, we see them doing this all the time, but also within the drama therapy sessions, we found that we often see older children, towards sort of the upper end of primary and secondary as well, using toys to play out feelings and experiences in drama therapy. And it's a really great tool that can often be forgotten about once children get into gaming or other interests. Call and response. So this is the idea of singing phrases or random words or sounds to each other and the other person repeating them back. So you can get your child to take the lead on this one, if it feels sort of strange or uncomfortable. So and you might think of a nice example is the sound of birds calling to each other and using sounds to do so. And it can be really useful to sometimes just to use sounds rather than having the emphasis on words. Okay, so drawing feelings. The activity of drawing or painting can help children to make sense of the world around them. And as they draw, they'll often become involved sort of using actions and dialogue or sound effects, and you can help to kind of help to support this and to help maybe start conversations about drawings by asking very open questions, as we spoke earlier with during the worries about the pandemic, and so asking, if your picture could speak, what would it say? Those sorts of questions. There are also no limits with drawing, so you can ask a child to draw the strongest angry picture that you can think of, and then as the child calms, you can adapt this, so you can ask them to draw a fire that's welcoming and good to look at. So the idea of kind of the drawings tracking their emotional process as well and using it as an outlet. It's also, just to say, it's really important not to interpret children's drawings before asking them to tell you about them, because as adults we can easily misunderstand or project our own feelings onto them, and so asking children to explain their drawings to you first will really help them to feel listened to and also feel that their drawings are valued. And you might also like to have a special folder or a box or drawer where these drawings are kept, so keeping them contained and so your child knows where they are and that they're being kept safe. So you may have seen body maps before or used them with your children, so they can be another really useful tool when we're exploring feelings creatively. So offering your child some paper, and you can draw the outline of the body, or if your child's able to, ask them to, and then get them to write or to draw how it feels inside the different parts of their body. So include their hands, feet, arms, body and head, and you've got an example on the right there of how this can work, and it will look different for every child. So another area to think about is music, and it has a really important role to play at the moment with regards to emotional well-being. So if your child already plays an instrument, then encourage them to play and to practice whenever they feel like it. And also thinking about music that you and your child can make together, so using household objects and tins, drums, or just using your hands to play clapping games. And so these kind of sort of very rhythmic tools can also be really helpful in getting children to express their feelings. So, for example, you might, exploring the feeling of anger, you might drum like a herd of elephants, or tell the story of anger on a drum, and then move towards a feeling of calm, slowing the rhythm down, thinking, you might kind of think about images, calming images, so trickling water, a sea breeze, and then tapping. Children tapping on their knees or on their head is also a very good way of grounding. So sort of another calming activity for a child, so they can create their own beat or tap along to music if you're listening to music. And you can also use music to, thinking about kind of being at home a lot and with home learning to alter, to kind of provide transition points within the day, or to kind of alter the mood, using it between lessons to help with transition, or there may be music that you listen to during learning as well, that can really help focus. But it's really, I know, very individual as to what you and your child choose. Also the idea of helping your child to make a playlist for different moods. So what's their favourite song that they enjoy listening to, and so looking up the lyrics and changing the lyrics as well to make the song feel more personalised for them might be another activity to do. So this slide is showing what is happening in our bodies when we listen to music. And a lot of changes happen. So exercise, if you're exercising when you're listening to music, music can help you to push harder and longer in your workout due to the music's effect on your physical capacity. Music can affect your memory, so you can form and recall memories due to the release of dopamine in your body. And dopamine is often called the feel-good neurochemical, and so your mood can be boosted by listening to music as well. Work performance, as we said, music can help with focus, so performing better on tasks and tests. Blood pressure, falling or rising, depending on the speed and type of music that you listen to, and also skin. So you can feel physical sensations on your skin in response to particularly moving music. Okay, so we're going to move on to some calming and focusing activities. So we thought about, the high arousal and low arousal. So these may be really useful when a child is in a state of high arousal. Play-Doh, you may have some at home, or it can be a fun activity to make it yourself. And there's lots of recipes on YouTube, lots of very simple recipes for making your own Play-Doh. And using Play-Doh or clay is known for its therapeutic properties. So the act of squishing and pinching and moulding it so can provide a kinesthetic learning opportunity. So this helps develop mindfulness and also focus. And how you can develop this is by thinking about a way of asking children to process their feelings using play or Play-Doh. So thinking of an object or an animal that represents how they're feeling and asking them to make a sculpture of it. That may be an idea to use. And also, and then we've got a picture of this lovely line of glitter bottles. So just filling an empty bottle with water and with glitter, and asking your child to shake the bottle and watch the glitter float all around. And you can talk this through with your child, so showing them that the water might be very murky and unclear, and this is like our minds when our tricky feelings get too big for us. So ask your child to keep watching until the glitter and their mind can settle, and then they can shake the glitter bottle as many times as they need. So at the beginning of the presentation, we asked you to share your favourite stories that you enjoyed hearing as a child, and we're just going to touch on communication and connecting emotions through stories. So book characters can be very, very powerful, and we often recognise ourselves and their experiences, and through reading a book we might find a name for difficult feelings as well. And there've been some really helpful books written throughout the pandemic for children to explain. This one's around social distancing while we can't hug, and around the coronavirus itself. And so these can really help to ease anxieties. And the other books here are around different emotions, so around anxiety and loneliness and anger as well. And when we think about difficult feelings, one of the most helpful things about using books is that we can help to distance the topic. So children might be able to talk about the feelings of a character in a way that they're not able to do if they're talking about themselves. And then we don't have to use books in a reactive way. We can discuss difficult feelings before they happen, and through books we can provide children with the right vocabulary to talk about how they feel. So do have a look, for books around feelings if this is an area you think your child might benefit from. We also have some storytelling videos on our YouTube channel, so please have a look at those as well. So relaxation cards. So these are, this is the idea of making cards at sort of credit card size that you can give to your child to carry around with them. So something that they can look at if they're having a tough time and need to, have an image of something that is going to help them to feel more relaxed or to help them to calm down. Mandalas, we're going to just talk briefly about. This is mandalas have a long history in Buddhist and Hindu cultures, and they're often used in creative therapies. And the process of creating a mandala can be very relaxing. And to think that the main idea around this tool is it's not about the final image or the final product. So it's about the actual process of doing it, and that can be really relaxing. Another idea around using a mandala is that starting with a circle can take off the pressure of doing a good drawing or not knowing where to start when you're faced with a blank piece of paper. And you may, there's an idea here of having a journal, a mandala journal, which could be a rewarding long-term project for your child as well. So we've touched on this very briefly, and it's a big area. So if you're interested in finding out more about mandalas and how to use them, there's lots of useful information online. And this is more of a physical activity, calming activity. So called Squish and Relax. So the idea of tensing muscles and then releasing them, and working through the body, and doing this to release the muscles and move towards relaxation. And lastly, worry balloons. So drawing some balloons or having physical balloons, and writing down the things that you're worried about, and then you can imagine the balloon floating away high up to the sky. So that's another mindfulness activity that you might want to try with your child. And we're aware that there's more activities that we can cover today, so we've added a few more to the ends of the end of the slides. And we so if you'd like us to email the slides to you, we're very happy to do that, and we've got the email address for you at the end of the presentation.
So also we just wanted to share some further resources in form of apps and websites. So the NHS have developed an app called Chill Panda, which is aimed at 6 to 8 year olds, and Your Mindful Garden, which is developed by CBeebies for younger children. And there's also something for parents and carers, which is called Calm, and Think Ninja, which is aimed at 10 to 18 year olds. Molehill Mountain, which is aimed at ASD children. There's also Young Minds, which has a website, but also a advice line. I don't think it's 24 hours, but there is a number that can be called, and they will offer advice on the phone. And then there's also goodthinking.uk, which is a mental health support for London. And we've just also added in a link here for art therapy activities for anxiety, grounding and mindfulness. So as Emily said, if you would like any further help, the South West London and St George's Children and Young People's Wellbeing Service, as we said at the beginning, offers parent-guided self-help sessions for common behavioural difficulties and managing anxiety in children. We also offer group and individual drama therapy sessions on a termly rotational basis within our Battersea cluster schools. And if you're interested, please email us or speak to your child's school. And you can email us at wandsworth.wp@southwestlondonstgeorges.nhs.uk. We also have a YouTube channel where this webinar and other webinars that we've done are on there, and also the therapeutic storytelling videos are on there as well. And our channel's called Children and Young People's Wellbeing Service. And there may be some people on this webinar that is not from the Wandsworth Borough, so we just suggest talking to your schools and finding out who is your mental health support team in your borough. So now we've got a time for some questions. And again, feel free to put them in the chat, or if you'd prefer, you can unmute yourself and speak to us directly. We know some people may have to leave, so if you could spend a few moments just completing the feedback form, which we'll post in the chat, that would be really useful for us to get some feedback of what was useful or what people would like more of. And once we've finished with the chat, then the questions, then that ends the workshop for today. So we just like to thank you for coming, and I'll hand back over to Emily.
Thank you very much. We're going to stop recording the presentation before we start the questions.